Welcome to our next video. So today we're going to talk a little bit about confounding variables and introduce the idea of internal validity. So this one's a pretty short video, but I'm going to just be here in the notes where we kind of introduce this idea. And so before we really dig into confounding variables, let's just kind of clarify again what is internal validity and why this matters. So to judge a design, to judge a study based on internal validity is to ask ourselves, can we confidently identify a causal relationship between two or more variables from this design, right? So most of the time in research, we're interested in causal effects, like how two things directly relate to one another. So when we collect data, we want to be sure that the design used is designed well to do that, or if it's not, that we're aware of that, and that we know that we can't make that extra kind of layer of interpretation of causation. So key to understanding internal validity is understanding this idea of confounding. So confounding is an inherent issue in observational studies where I don't have a controlled intervention and I don't have the power of assignment, which we'll talk about a lot more when we get to observational studies. But here's a really classic example of confounding. Let's say that I am collecting data about ice cream sales and murder rates. I don't know why I'd be doing that, but let's just say I am. And I notice from some data that whenever ice cream sales go up on a particular day, that the murder rate is also a little bit higher on that same day as well. And when ice cream sales are low, murder rates are also low. So I might be wondering, like, what is one of those things causing the other? Like, do people who eat ice cream feel particularly murderous on a particular day or something like that? But that's because there's a really good explanation. There's a confounding variable in this relationship, and that would be temperature outside, and whether there's a heat wave or something like that, right? So when temperatures are hot, people are more likely to buy ice cream, and when temperatures are hot, people are more likely to get angry and act violently. Not like all of us do that, but such issues are more likely to happen in a community when temperatures are high and people are overheated and things like that. Okay, so this would be confounding, and we want to make sure when we do a study that when we're designing our study that we're preventing confounding from throwing off our work here. That we want to try to eliminate all the different confounding influences and kind of control our setting and our environment as much as we possibly can. So with that in mind, let's look at another observational study here. Let's say that we have an observational study that shows that people who drink coffee live longer. Like, people who drink more coffee live longer. What might be a confounder to explain this association? And by the way, if you were to Google search this, you'd find lots of observational studies that make claims about coffee and possible health benefits of coffee, possible health detriments of coffee. And some of those studies are better than others. But there's a lot of observational study data out there, and there's a lot of confounders going on here when we look at coffee and health. That said, let's kind of brainstorm a little bit about what could be some confounders here. So the first thing that I would think about is health status slash income levels. So socioeconomic status is probably a good thing to write down here. So what I mean by that is I think that people who have white-collar jobs and generally higher paying jobs are more likely to drink more coffee and are also more likely to live longer because they probably have better health care or something like that. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to kind of postulate that socioeconomic status might be related here to more coffee. It puts you in an environment, a workplace, or a economic situation where you're more likely to drink coffee. And I think it also might be related to the fact that you might be living longer. Perhaps, maybe I want to add like healthcare in here as almost like a mediating variable, like socioeconomic status leads to better healthcare, which leads to longer lifespan, something like that. But I think this is one possible confounder in this study. We could list more. We could talk about, is there an age effect, or like coffee versus something else. Like people usually drink coffee for the caffeine, but people might seek caffeine in different ways. So some people might drink energy drinks, or some people might drink sugary drinks like Coke. So my mom actually drinks, I don't know if she's going to watch this. My mom drinks Diet Coke every morning, and she does it for caffeine. She does not drink coffee. And I would argue that Diet Coke is probably not as healthy as coffee. So it could be kind of related to your caffeine choices, where it's really not, the coffee really isn't helping you, but it's kind of in place as something that might be hurting you, right? So we could kind of delve into this causal relationship and what confounding variables are involved here. But yeah, observational studies are really hard to pick apart when we have possible confounders. They're not really well designed to make that relationship confident, or like to make the causal connection confidently. We also have an observational study found that people who use sunscreen have a higher rate of skin cancer. Does that mean that people should stop using sunscreen to lower their skin cancer risk? I would definitely encourage you to think about this for a minute here before I answer it. You can pause the video, but I will keep moving on here. So I think there's a very, very, I won't say obvious, but like a very clear confounder in this one. And that has to do with the types of people who wear sunscreen. So me, as a very light-skinned person, I'm very, very light-skinned. I grew up very freckly. I am very skin cancer prone, and I wear sunscreen all the time. So I think there's something to say here about your skin color and melanin in your skin. So I might think here. I hope I'm spelling this correctly. Melanin. Okay, we'll just go with it. Might lead to wearing sunscreen. And melanin might also make you a lot more prone to skin cancer. Now, obviously, people of all skin types can still get skin cancer, but we also know that the risk factors are very different, right? So the more melanin you have in your skin, the darker your skin is, the more naturally protected your skin's going to be. So yeah, melanin, though, does give some explanatory power here as to why people who wear a lot of sunscreen might also be more likely to have skin cancer to begin with. So yeah, I would go there. Here's another example here, but this one, though, is an experiment. So this one's a little bit categorically different. Because we already have some sense of controlled intervention, we have the power of assignment, but things can still go wrong. I don't even know if wrong is the right word. Like, there can still be confounders in the experimental setting because we can't control everything. It's really hard to have a perfect experiment. So it's really important to still kind of pick apart experimental designs as well and think about what confounders really weren't controlled for. So let's look here. We have a randomized control trial to assess students' mathematical performance and whether it was enhanced by taking MathBar, a new protein bar. Half the participants were given MathBar before the test and were told this would boost their focus and memory recall. They completed their exam in one classroom. The other half did not receive anything and served as a control group. They completed their exam in another room. The group that received MathBar had a statistically significantly higher average score. The researchers claimed MathBar improves mathematical performance. Okay, so I see a couple things here that could confound this causal link. Again, I'd encourage you to pause the video and identify a couple possible red flags you have yourself, but I'll go ahead here. The first thing that I would say relates to something we've already talked about, and that's a placebo effect. So when we're looking at this comparison, we're trying to get to, is MathBar the only thing that's different between these two groups' experiences, right? Because if it's the only thing that's different, then we're going to feel confident that's MathBar that's making the difference. But I see a couple of things that are different about these two groups' experience. One of them is kind of this encouragement that the math bar group got, because they were told that they were in the study, right? So there's no blinding, at least not for the treatment group. There's no blinding, no placebo. So the control group didn't have another protein bar or something else, right? So that already has a strong psychological confounder here. You know, because I could also argue that maybe math bar may or may not be affected, but there's definitely a confidence difference that I think the math bar students were given more confidence going into their exam. That could have changed how well they did, kind of their headspace taking the exam, a lot of things like that. So I would definitely say there's a psychological confounder in this study. This one's a small one. It may not matter, but I would note that they were in two different rooms, right? So students were in two different rooms. And there could be something different about the rooms. There could be something different about the proctors. You know, there could be something different about the desks that kind of systematically affected one group differently than the other. It's hard to know from the information provided. We honestly don't know, but it's something that we need to mark. It's a possibility that is not known at this point. So I'm going to say kind of a room environment confounder. Beyond that, I don't know if I see any clear differences. As we're going to talk about internal validity threats here coming up, and we're going to talk more about some specific things to check for. But these are the two things that strike me as most obvious, most kind of systematically different, that could confound this causal link between math bar and getting higher mathematical scores.